Good morning. Good morning also to those watching online. Glad to have you with us as well. When I was in seminary, that's pastor school, about 11 years ago now, I managed to get through 4 years of school with only about $8,000 of debt, which is an incredible blessing. Had a good wife that helped pay the bills too, but also meant some lean times and some large bills to be paid. So every quarter when a bill would come due, I would see a large 4-digit number in my account, and I would fret and I would worry, and then I would go to my mailbox and I would find $2,000 from an LWML group, $1,000 from a congregation somewhere. What did I do in those moments? I felt a little silly, first of all, for all that worrying. Then I prayed, I thanked God, I rejoiced at that gift, at God's provision. Then, 3 months later, I would see a large 4-digit number in my account, and I would fret, and I would worry, and then I would go to my mailbox, and every single quarter, it went on that way. Every time, it happened just like that. I worried, God provided, I worried again, as if those perfectly timed checks had never happened. Do you ever experience that in your life? Yeah, some hands are going up. You watch yourself doing that, right? Almost like we can bird's eye view our own lives and say, why am I doing this? Over and over we feel that. That cycle, those ups and then downs again, are exactly what we're exploring today. Our specific question is basically, why do the highs wear off so quickly? Those spiritual highs of experiencing God's power and His goodness that leave us in a position of gratitude and trust and that make us say, I'm really going to keep with it this time. This is going to be different. I'm really going to keep trusting this time. Why do they wear off so quickly? We'll answer that question, but we're going to also mine these words for something more. More important than why, what can we do about it? As we pick back up the story of the Israelites here in chapter 15, they've now made it across the Red Sea. They had been pursued by the Egyptian army. The water parted for them to walk across, then it rushed back together, drowning the entire army, that pursuing army. All the people of God were praising, including with those tambourines that Pastor Josh doesn't like, extolling His greatness, His protection, His mighty power. But it didn't even last through the end of the chapter. They crossed safely to the other side of the Red Sea, and we're not told exactly how much time passes, but here toward the end of chapter 15, they were made to move. It's a causative verb. They were caused to move. In other words, they didn't want to. Moses made them. And remember, Moses only does what God instructs. He's the mouthpiece, the spokesperson of God. So this is another way of saying God made them move. They didn't want to. They were probably reluctant to step away from the spot, the place of that incredible victory, that spiritual high, wanting to bask in that moment just a little bit longer, right? Like Peter, when Jesus was transfigured, when He was revealed to be God and clothed in those bright white clothes and lit up like God would be. And Peter says, it's good to be right here. Moses and Elijah are there, and he likes it. It's good to be here. Let's just stay here, he says. Like you. When you have those spiritual, formative mountaintop moments and you wish they would never end, they probably wanted to stay in that moment a little longer. But here's the other thing, another reason why they'd be reluctant to leave. Very likely, according to the geography, the archaeology that we find of that area, the Israelites were probably camped at a place called Ayun Musa, Ayunmusa. It's been described as the only green spot in a desolate tract of land, a vast desolate land, the only green spot. So let's translate that. They're in a nice, green, lush place. And as they look all around them, ahead and behind and all around, they can see everything they can see is just hot, dry desert. No wonder they didn't want to leave. But God caused them to go. He made them leave. That's probably a big part of the reason they found it hard to trust him. He had pulled them away from what was known and what was comfortable toward unknown and discomfort. That raises an obvious question. Why would he do that? Because a tiny green spot in the middle of the desert is not what he had in mind for them. Remember what he promised them? A land, a whole land flowing with milk and honey. That is abundant, overflowing with everything they need for survival and comfort. That's what he wanted to give them. Staying in Ayun Musa would be like going to Disneyland and spending the week in the grassy island in the parking lot. It's not what's there. God made them move because he wanted more for them. You might be in a spot right now where you feel like you're being led away from what's known and comfortable. How do you know if it's God doing that? How do you know if it's God causing you to move, as he did the Israelites? I'm going to tell you, this is not a fully formed thought that I'm going to give you right now. I'm still wrestling with this question, but here's what I can share with you now about how you can discern that. The call of God will look like the work of God. The call of God will look like the work of God. What is the work of God? We've seen it all through Exodus so far, haven't we? Creating and building up, rescuing and healing, restoring and making new. That's the work of God. And so a move, a push, or a pull that is of God will look like that. It will support your family, not harm them. It will be for the good of your community rather than its detriment. It will draw people toward God instead of pushing them away. It might be that there's a threat pushing you. Sometimes it's a pursuing army on the other side, right? Could be a big change, a new life stage, a new relationship, a birth or a loss. Might be an opportunity that is before you, a promised land of sorts. But either way, all you can see ahead and around and behind is desert and danger and hard days. If that's where you are, I want you to notice something really important about this story. God is in it the whole time. God is in it the whole time. Right in the middle of the desert, he shows up. Even in the midst of grumbling and anger, he's there to provide and to heal. God is in that the whole time. I can't say what you'll find on the other side of your desert that you're being pulled toward. But here's what we can know for sure, what you can trust in. God has good in mind for you. He wants more for you. If not right now, if not in this moment, then ultimately, there's a land, a kingdom of good and abundance, and he's promised you a place in it. As the people left Ayun Musa, the next water spot was 33 miles away. They made that trip in 3 days, which means 11 miles per day. Let's just do some math. A large group of people, somewhere around 2 million people of all ages, all ability levels, along with herds of animals as well, crossing rough desert terrain. Reasonably, they could probably move about 1.5 miles per hour. It's about their pace. And so to cover 11 miles in a day, if you're a math whiz, you already know that's over 7 hours of walking. 7 hours of hard walking in the heat and the sun of the desert, over rocks and sand, doing that for 7 hours, and then you wake up and you do it again the next day, and then the day after that. In other words, they didn't forget to trust God accidentally. They forgot because life was hard. It was hard to trust because life was hard. Some of you need to hear that. Or maybe someone in your life needs it. Usually it's the stronger Christians in your life who need to hear it's hard to trust because life is hard. You need it. Some of you, even here today, need to hear those words because you're trudging slowly. You're slogging forward day after day, and the progress is slow, and every bit of it drains you, and you wonder in the midst of all that why you're having a hard time trusting God, and you beat yourself up because you're having a hard time trusting God. It's because life is hard. That's why you're having a hard time, because life is hard. And so if that's you, if you're in a really hard season right now, if you're struggling through the desert in this moment and it's hard for you to trust God through it, forgive yourself, because God already has. Give yourself grace, because Jesus already did. And he promises that he will be with you through all of it. Always, he says. To the very end, he says, he will be with you. And he promises that he takes your heavy burden in exchange for his light one. When you give him over and over heavy burdens, what does he give you? Light ones. And he promises that his Father, your Father, waits for you with arms open wide. If you're in a hard spot and you're having trouble trusting, forgive yourself. Give yourself grace. It's hard because life is hard. Sometimes that's why we forget to trust, right? And there's grace for that. Sometimes, though, we forget to trust in God because we have misplaced trust. We have misplaced our trust. Think about this. When the Israelites left Ayin Musa, they were desert people, they were resourceful people, they knew the terrain, right? They knew they were headed into the desert and that their next water source was probably days away, so they certainly would have brought water with them, wouldn't they? That's a wise and smart thing to do. They certainly would have done it. So they're bringing water for the whole family, including herds of animals. How much water do you think they could have carried? I'd guess about 3 days worth. Sound about right? So they can carry about 3 days worth of water. And when did the grumbling start? 3 days in. They arrived, interestingly, at the water spot that they would come to call bitter 3 days after setting out. Interestingly enough, just when they needed to. A lot like those seminary support checks that showed up in my mailbox right when I needed them. They arrived there just when they needed to, by God's provision, by God's planning. They arrived there under the banner of a God who had convinced Pharaoh to turn them loose, who had parted a sea for them to walk across it, who had drowned the most powerful army the world had ever known. They arrived there under the care of a God who had proved himself over and over to be powerful and trustworthy, but they couldn't see that. It was hard for them to see while they were staring down at their empty water jugs. They couldn't see God's power, couldn't trust in his strength, while their eyes were fixed on their own resources. They couldn't trust what God could bring about as long as their trust was placed in what little they brought. So I want to ask you a question. What's the water jug you need to stop staring at? What's the thing in your life that you turn to when you need comfort, security, certainty, even if it regularly fails to provide you that you need to break your gaze away from and turn your focus back to God and his power and what he's done for you through Jesus on the cross and the promise that he made to you and reaffirms for you day after day? What's that thing for you? Whatever it is, turn your eyes from it and turn them to the cross of Jesus. It will not let you down. Then, do it again and again. Each time your gaze drifts back to that thing or some other thing, it will, and that's okay, shift it back. Jesus will be there each and every time. If you have a thing in mind that you want to shift your eyes from, or you know that you should, here's how you can do that. When it comes into your head, when you notice yourself drifting toward that thing, your thoughts are going in that direction, first, be compassionate to yourself. I heard this in a podcast a while back, and I really liked it. The speaker said, your brain is like a really good friend who has really bad ideas. Your brain really wants you to be comfortable, really wants to help you get out of that hard spot, and it offers you then things that have worked a little bit before, things that it seems like might be helpful, but they aren't. And so be compassionate about yourself. It doesn't have a very good idea, but it wants to help. So you don't have to get mad. You don't have to be descending into shame. Just say, thanks, but no thanks, brain. That thing won't help. Then Literally tell Jesus you want to look away from that thing and toward him. Tell Jesus you want to look away from that and toward him. Say a short prayer, one sentence maybe, and ask him to help you do exactly that. One more thought I'll share with you. Start maybe writing it down. I've started a new sort of journaling exercise every morning, and I specifically set it up so that I have to do it before I can see my task list for the day, so I don't blow past it, right? Just a few sentences I write every morning answering this question: what do I need to hand over to Jesus? And it really has helped me. Number one, notice where my thoughts are. Be aware of where my thoughts are. And then consciously go in another direction. And it often prompts me even to pray and maybe read a few Bible verses as well. When those things come into your head and you know you should be turning away from them and toward Jesus, or you want to do that first, be compassionate to yourself. Then ask him, help me do that. Maybe even start writing it down. When they got to the water spot after those 3 hard days, the Israelites couldn't even drink the water. Gypsum and other dissolved minerals had made it salty and undrinkable. Even today, that pool is known to be that way. And so the people started grumbling. We see that word a lot. This is the first of 3 grumbling episodes in 3 successive chapters, 15, 16, 17 in Exodus, and then 7 times it shows up in the book of Numbers. They're doing a lot of grumbling, right? They were grumbling to or against Moses, but this word is really interesting because this word for grumbling also is used for the cry of the oppressed. And if you've been with us the past several weeks, or you know something of this story of Exodus, you'll remember these people were oppressed. These people were crying out about it. We read those cries. Not too long ago, these people were crying out to God. But they've been pushed beyond their comfort level. They've been experiencing hard times. They've turned toward trusting their own resources and their own strength. And so now they're directing toward Moses, a flawed man, a weak person, what should properly be turned over to God. Did you catch that shift there? Yeah. This is where we're going to make a turn in our exploration of the passage as well. We're not going to focus any longer on why it's hard to trust God. That part is fairly straightforward. But instead on what we can do about it. And the first suggestion is this: turn it over to God. If you have doubts or complaints or fears or questions, if you're unsure or unconvinced, that's fine. You're welcome here with all that. Put it where it belongs, not where it doesn't. Give it to God. When we say that, what we mean is tell him it. Ask him to take it on. God, I'm feeling anxious. God, I'm doubting. Whatever it might be, take it from me. I pray that prayer a lot. Sometimes that's all I have. Take it from me. If you've never tried that, even if you think it sounds like a nonsense fairy tale, just try it. Why not? Turn it over to him, whatever it is. You can't scare him off. You won't make him mad. He says, test me and see. He wants to be put to the test. So do it. Take him up on that. What you're going to find as you give those things over to him, the only thing you can expect is love and care, grace and compassion. Next, when the people start to grumble, even though their grumbling was misdirected, even though they weren't talking to the one who could actually fix the problem, God does fix it. Even as they called out to the wrong person and not to him, he intervened anyway to fix it. There's some hope in there for you. He showed Moses a log. No special log from what we can tell, not some particular tree out there in the desert that has sweetening properties. An ordinary log combined with the word and promise of God that changed the water. Probably didn't make the water sweet in the way we would think about it. It's not sweet tea. Sweet water would be kind of gross anyway, right? Hebrew has a tendency to be very stark, very, very cut and dry. A thing and the opposite thing. Not a lot of middle ground. A thing and the opposite thing. So the opposite of bitter is sweet. If a thing is not bitter, it's sweet, whether it's actually sweet or not. Probably it just means the water wasn't bitter anymore. It was drinkable now. In any case, our translations say God showed Moses the stick that did that. On closer inspection, it's closer to the word for Torah, the book of instruction. God instructed Moses. In their moment of crawling out and Moses' moment of needing to step up and do something for these people, God instructed Moses. I'm not trying to give you a translation lesson or a Hebrew lesson. I'm trying to point out something valuable for you when you're in hard places that make it hard to trust. Do what Moses did. Lean on God's instruction. When you need God, He's available to you through His Word. When you're in a hard season, turn back there. Read something, anything. Psalms are good. Gospels are good. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Proverbs can be really helpful. Read something for comfort and direction, and you will find God there. The same instruction that guided Moses, the same intervening hand of God is available to you through His Word. Just two things left to share with you. This next one, it's really important to me that you hear this. Because I'm willing to bet most of you, probably all of us even maybe in the room, have said some version of this when you're plodding through the desert. When you're in those hard times, I would bet you've said some version of, God is testing me. You don't have to put your hand up if you did, but I'd bet most of us have said, God's testing me. And then you come here and you read this, or it's read to you, God fixed the water, then He tested them, and you said, yep, I knew it. My hard time, that hard thing that I've been going through, it is a test of God, just as I suspected. I'm going to caution you in that. And I just want to point out that as we read the story, the test comes after. The test comes after the hard walk is done. The test comes after the bitter water turns drinkable. After God intervenes to heal and save, then the test comes. The order is really, really important to me. The test comes not after. The test comes not during the hard time, not as part of the hard time, but after God has acted to heal. So what does that mean for you? It's really important you hear this. The hard thing that you are going through may not be from God, probably is not from God. The hard parts of your struggle might just be, all it might mean is yet more evidence that the world is broken and corrupted by sin, and that sin is affecting you in this way, in this moment. It might not be of God. And here's something else to consider about that test. It has really two distinctive features in it. A covenant promise, a relationship promise. I will sustain you without obstacles if you pay attention to my statutes, and a self-revelation from God. I am the Lord your God, your healer. So if you wonder, is God testing me? Here's what a test of God includes. Here's what it means for you. It is not the hard walking. It is not the hard walking. He doesn't need that out of you anymore. He doesn't need it because everything that would prove, everything He needed to see through something like that was satisfied by Jesus on your behalf. Jesus did it for you. So God does not need that from you anymore. He does not need you to walk through hard things to prove anything to Him. He already did it. And so He doesn't do that to you anymore. A test of God as we see it here is God's presence with you, with a revelation of His care and His power for you, alongside a promise to you. Presence, power, promise. That's what a test of God looks like. If it's true that God is doing something in this hard time that you're in, to whatever extent it is true that God is involved in this thing that you're walking in, that God has some hand in it, that's what it looks like. Presence, power, promise. Not proving yourself, but God's presence with you. And so you can embrace it. Much like the Israelites arriving at Marah, we've reached the end of a long, arduous journey. So let me end where they ended. That was a joke about my preaching length. Having journeyed a hard way, having seen the work and power of God and been tested by him, they arrive at Elim, an area of 12 springs and 70 palm trees. Some will say that matches up really well with the 12 tribes of Israel and the 70 elders that we see in places like Revelation, a really nice picture or metaphor of the promised land that was to come. Maybe so. But on a much more basic level, it was wet, and it was shady, and it was nice. It was everything they needed in abundance. Not just one spring, but 12. Not just one shade tree, but 70. Everything they need for comfort and protection and provision in abundance. It wasn't the final destination, but it was provision and comfort in abundance along the way. When you are in the desert, and it's so hard to see anything else but hot and dry, and it's so hard to trust God in that, keep going. Turn the grumbles over to him. He's big enough for them. And lean on his word for guidance and strength. You'll find him there. And while you do that, keep looking ahead, because there's an Elim for you. There is comfort and provision for you. I am confident in it that God has that for you. And even if it takes you a long time to find it, and you're so belagged and beat down by the time that you get there, or even if you never find it, there's a promised land for you. There's a place for you coming soon where you will be whole and complete and protected and at rest. That is God's promise for you. In his name, amen.